gestational age pregnancy. Prematurity and even sometimes neonatal pneumonia. So urinary tract infection is independently associated with all these complications. Hence, just not the diagnosis, but the treatment of UTI in pregnancy can significantly decrease these kinds of complications. Now, if there are any questions while I'm speaking, you can please raise your hand and ask the questions. We'll take on the questions simultaneously so that it is interactive rather than just a simple monologue from my side. Because most of you are aware of most of the things. Is just think of it as a recap to what we are already doing. So urinary tract infections can be of two major types. One are asymptomatic. That means the woman has no symptoms during this of this infection, and the other is definitely a symptomatic infection. To diagnose an asymptomatic bacteriuria, you have to have a colony count of more than 1 lakh organisms per ml of urine. Symptomatic bacteriuria is obviously the presence of the symptoms of any UTI, and even a small count of 100 organisms per ml of urine with accompanying pyuria, that is the WBC count, has to be more than either 5 WBCs per high power field, or as this is 7 to 8 WBCs per ml. The diagnosis of whether it is asymptomatic or symptomatic has to be confirmed by a positive culture, and we have already completed the risks, so I'll just asymptomatic bacteriuria can be present in up to 2.5 to 11%. So 11% is a significantly large number, 11% of all the pregnant women. Symptomatic bacteria can be again of two types. One is bladder acute cystitis, that is less severe, and the second is when you approach up to the kidney, or acute pyelonephritis. So acute cystitis is, as the name suggests, an inflammation of the bladder. It can be bacterial causes. It can also be non-bacterial causes like radiation or viral infections. And it complicates 1% of all pregnancies. Acute pyelonephritis affects 2% of all pregnancies. And out of these 2% who are affected with acute pyelonephritis, 46% occur in the third trimester. 52 will occur during the second trimester and 2% during the first trimester. So, colleagues, see that 52% in the second trimester, if you miss this pyelonephritis, you can cause significant complications. So, it's pertinent to do this, to be aware of this diagnosis and to diagnose it as well as treat it, especially in the second and the third trimesters. Now, we all know that UTIs are commoner in women and definitely more so in pregnant women. Why in women? Because the urethra is shorter. The lower 1/3 of the urethra is contaminated with pathogens from the vagina and the rectum. The urogenital system is exposed to bacteria during sexual intercourse. And then obviously because of privacy factors, so women cannot evacuate their bladders at all places and hence tend to also hold back urine. All these lead to an increased chance of UTI in women. Now, why in pregnant women? Why are pregnant women more have higher incidence of UTI? One is because pregnancy is an immunocompromised condition. We all know that. That is why a mother can accept a fetus who is not alike to her in all the facilities, and therefore she has an immunocompromised position to accept a fetus. So this immunocompromise of pregnancy itself causes an increase of UTI. Then we have anatomical causes and the physiological causes. The anatomical causes is the pressure of the gravid uterus. Physiological are the hormonal changes. Progesterone during pregnancy. Progesterone will cause dilatation of the myodilatation, muscular dilatation. So it will cause reducing the tone of the ureter of the bladder. So the bladder tends to fill up more, and this causes stasis as well as the vesicoureteral reflux. So the urine in the bladder can again go up to the ureter. All this causes an increased chances of urinary tract infection, and this is commoner on the right side. 86% are on the right side, and only 14% is on the left side. UTI can begin at 10 weeks. As I said, the first trimester is on the lower chance, but it worsens throughout pregnancy. Then if you are doing urine routine, you will also see that in pregnancy, you tend to get glycosuria because the kidney, which is like a sieve, it's a chutney, the sieve, becomes the holes of the sieve become larger in pregnancy, and that tends to allow the glucose, which is a larger molecule, to just pass through the kidney even without any pathology. So glycosuria and aminoaciduria are commoner in pregnancy. Glycosuria also predisposes to UTI, and aminoaciduria, even selective aminoaciduria, for unknown reasons, has been postulated to affect the adherence of the E. coli to the urinary epithelium. So both these also independently increase the incidence of UTI in pregnancy. So now let's go back. As I said, there are two major factors, two major causes of UTI. One is asymptomatic and one is symptomatic. So asymptomatic bacteria, who are the risk, who are the ones you should repeat a urine analysis for, are the ones who have on a lower socioeconomic criteria, who have sickle cell trait, diabetes mellitus, neurogenic bladder retention, history of vesicoureteral reflux. I mean, she cannot evacuate, and then after some time again she feels that she wants to evacuate. Then previous renal transplantation, history of previous UTIs, multiple pregnancy, and those who are less ambulant. So even hospitalized patients who are not ambulant, then they have an increased incidence of asymptomatic bacteriuria. Where does the infection come from? The commonest is an ascending infection. In pregnant women, as well, the infection and a recurrence of infection is usually an ascending infection. It is the infection from the vagina, from the perineum and the anus, which actually ascends to the bladder, and that is what causes UTI and even a recurrence of UTI. Is this thing clear? Because this is what actually causes UTI. So simply being a woman, you are at a risk of UTI because of an anatomical cause. Married women with sexual intercourse, again you are at a risk of UTI. Women who are on birth control, because especially hormonal, the OCPs, the hormonal birth controls, it causes, we all know the hormones, they cause thinning of the epithelium. So the hormonal birth controls or even postmenopausal women are at an increased incidence of UTIs. Immunocompromised, diabetics, women with catheters. So all these catheterization, so all these increase UTI and definitely pregnancy. So these are the women who, or the people who have an increased chances of UTI. So these are the things we should take in a history if you really have to exclude UTI. Here, ladies and gentlemen, is something which is astonishing, that UTI is the second most common infection following respiratory tract infection. 40% of all women will suffer UTI at one point. So all of us attending here, out of all the women attending here, 40% of us, even without pregnancy, will have, sometimes will have a UTI. And 30% of all pregnant women will definitely suffer from UTI. So the incidence of UTI is so high. It is not something to be taken lightly that nahi, urine ka infection hai, wo hota hai, and it occurs and it's going to be okay. No, you have to take it seriously because this can increase the morbidity, as I said. Everything, a rose, a thorns, the rose will have thorns. So when you have roses, you will get thorns, but you also see the rose. So UTI itself can be protective. You know, like they say, when a door closes, then destiny opens a window. How is So UTIs are actually sometimes they are self-retaining, they treat themselves. So how? Because the urine becomes acidic during UTI, which can kill the bacteria. Then there is D-mannose in the urinary tract, which does not allow the bacteria to stick to the epithelial wall. So the D-mannose during the urinary tract infection, that also allows the bacteria to wash off. And we all know that UTI is associated with repeated passage of urine. They will complain, we need to keep passing urine. So frequency of micturition and that repeated passage of urine will also flush out the bacteria. So UTI may resolve on its own spontaneously, but since it has a high chance of resolving spontaneously, do we still need to treat the UTI? Yes. UTI can be asymptomatic and symptomatic, I said. So going back, what are the symptoms of UTI? Definitely, the urinary symptoms are burning micturition, dysuria, frequent desire to urinate. Sometimes it can be hesitancy, and sometimes it can be even urge incontinence. Then pain. A cystitis will have a suprapubic pain, and pyelonephritis will have flank pains. Fever. Definitely, all infections are associated with fever, and a urinary tract infection, especially pyelonephritis, is associated with fever with chill and rigor. Fever with chill and rigor, the most important causes of fever with chill and rigor are, we all know, malaria, pneumonia, and UTI. So if she is complaining of fever with chill and rigor, and you can exclude malaria and pneumonia, UTI is a very important cause of fever with chill and rigor. Low back pain and fatigue. The most troublesome aspect of UTI is a recurrence of UTI. You treat it once and it occurs again. So if a UTI occurs 2 times in 6 months or 3 times in a year, we term it as recurrence. Why does the recurrence occur? Because all the bacteria, the E. coli, does not get flushed out or does not get killed by the antibiotics that we are using. They're sometimes hidden in the crypts of the urinary epithelium, and it is difficult to flush out and kill this E. coli. So then they again come back and they cause a recurrence of the UTI. And this is worse than actually just simple UTI. So these are the complicated UTIs or the recurrent UTIs. Ladies and gentlemen, the most common cause of UTI is, we all know, Escherichia coli, Escherichia coli, E. coli. And that is 80 to 90% of the UTIs are because of E. coli. But do not forget the other pathogens like Klebsiella, Proteus, Group B, beta hemolytic Streptococcus, Proteus species, Enterobacter, and Staphylococcus saprophyticus. I would like to lay a very special stress on the group B beta hemolyticus as well as the Staph saprophyticus, because this group B beta hemolytic Streptococcus, that is the GBS, can not only cause UTI, but if it occurs during the intranatal period, it can cause neonatal sepsis or babies being delivered, because the vagina also has the infection. So all the blood, there is infection in the bladder, and it can pass to the baby, and it can cause neonatal sepsis as well as neonatal pneumonia. So this group B beta hemolytic streptococcus has to be tackled antenatally. Klebsiella, Proteus, these presence of these and recurrence of these can lead to nephrolithiasis also. Then staph, the Staph saprophyticus is a very aggressive organism, and this is what usually causes a recurrent or a persistent UTI. Lastly, do not forget chlamydial infections. The classical thing of chlamydial infections and even tuberculosis is that they cause sterile pyuria. You will get pus, you will get WBCs in the urine, but the urine culture will be negative. And this is, if these are the ones, these chlamydial infections treated with azithromycin, either single dose of 2 grams or 500 milligrams daily for 10 days, this takes care of the chlamydial infections. So if you get bacteria and the urine culture is sterile, think of chlamydia. The pregnancy complications we have already discussed are gestosis, then preterm delivery, increased incidence of cesarean section. Infections of the kidney can also lead to perinephric abscess as and sepsis, renal dysfunction, and this renal dysfunction, the sepsis can spread, and this can cause pulmonary complications. Sorry, no, this has just disappeared. Pulmonary complications. I'm sorry, I think I pressed something. And ARDS. So if you have any such complications, you have to take care of it accordingly. Unmute my microphone. Yeah. While he, I think I've just pressed. Yeah, got it. Are the slides back? Sorry, Dr. Kiran, are the slides back? Hello?
The Foxy's slide, which you showed first, maybe we can show it again after that.
But I've got my slides back on screen.
Yes,
is this...
it's back.
It's back, no? Fine,
yes,
fine. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. I pressed some wrong button and it disappeared. I think this is stuck out here. I'll just 1 sec. Yep. This is not moving. With all its complications of SIRS, and I think at the present moment, everybody has got SIRS, that is a systemic inflammatory response in their brains because of COVID. But even pyelonephritis, if allowed to, if not treated, can progress to SIRS and ARDS and even death. So it can be as simple as dysuria to as morbid as SIRS and death. This is the range of which a urinary tract infection can take you. So we now come to how do we diagnose and treat UTI, because that is something which is the most important part of this webinar. The diagnosis is by one, history. Be aware of the high-risk patients. Like I've already told you, the ones in whom asymptomatic bacteriuria is common. Then a history taking about the symptoms, dysuria, any other symptoms like frequency, urgency, suprapubic pain, even hematuria. Fever with chill, anorexia, nausea, vomiting. This is very common in pregnancy, but it can also be a part of a urinary tract infection. Then flank pain. If it is a right-sided pyelonephritis, you will get a right-sided flank pain, left-sided or even bilateral. Hypothermia, but sometimes when they progress, when the sepsis sets in, septicemia, they can even be hypothermic. Flank tenderness, the fetal heart sound, we all know whenever there is a maternal tachycardia, the fetal tachycardia is there. So there is obviously a increased fetal heart rate. What are the investigations? Here, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to stress on that urine analysis is a routine screening in all pregnancies. So any pregnant woman who comes to you, whenever she comes to you at the first instance, do a urine analysis, a routine and a microscopic examination, and if possible, do a dip, that heuristics dip test that has something called a nitrite in it. If you've got the one which has got multiple criteria, then it has got something called nitrite in it. If a nitrite is positive, then you know that she has a urinary tract infection and you can advise her a urine culture. If a nitrite is negative, then you can assume that she does not have urinary tract infection unless the urine analysis throws up a higher WBCs. So a urine analysis is a mandatory screening procedure for every pregnant woman when she first visits you in the antenatal OPD. Once you have suspected UTI and you feel that she needs further investigations because of pyelonephritis, you think of a complete blood count, then a serum electrolyte, the renal function test, and so on and so forth when you think of it progressing. So, as I said, a urine analysis is mandatory, is a screening procedure for every antenatal woman. Now, a culture. Would you suggest that a urine culture be done on a routine basis? If you're doing it, well and good. Nothing against doing a urine culture. It is even advised by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. ACOG says a urine culture should be done as a primary screening procedure along with a routine urine examinations. But for those of you who are not doing a urine culture initially, you can do a urine analysis, you do a dipstick, and if you suspect bacteria, you go in for a urine culture.
Ma'am, actually, there's one question, ma'am,
Yeah.
with relation to this. Dr. Sumita Lakshmi asks, if you have a colony count of 30,000 in the urine culture,
Right.
should we treat or not? If so, what is the lower limit of the count at which treatment should be initiated?
Right. Textbook says that if she is asymptomatic, that no symptoms, and a colony count of less than 1 lakh does not include, does not come in the textbook definition of asymptomatic bacteriuria. But if she's symptomatic, even a count as low, can you, hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible, ma'am.
You're audible, ma'am.
I'm audible.
Yeah.
So did I get through, or because that's what textbook says. In my opinion, if you get a urine, if you get a bacterial count of 30,000, please go in for a culture sensitivity. And if it shows a bacteria and antibiotics to which it is responsive, you use the antibiotics.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Right. Thank you. So we all know it has to be a midstream urine and a clean catch. I don't think I need to elaborate on a clean catch midstream urine, but definitely it has to be a midstream clean catch urine. Urine culture, standard method of evaluating UTI, but if you have a sterile culture and you have pyuria, please think of chlamydia or even genital tuberculosis. Then if you have, what are the other times that you repeat a urine culture is that you've already given her antibiotics, you've already treated her, and you want to evaluate whether the treatment is complete or not. So in a case of recurrent UTI, failure to respond to initial treatment, history of recent instrumentation or hospital admission, please repeat a urine culture. So it's not just you in an initial urine UTI, but even in such incidences, you have to repeat a urine. You may have to do a urine culture more than once, twice, thrice, more than once. You have to do a urine culture. Now, this if it's a positive culture, 2 positive cultures of greater than 1 lakh, asymptomatic, please treat. Sometimes there can be a contamination, but a midstream urine, we expect that it is not a contaminated sample. Patient with pyelonephritis often have WBCs in the urine. So in the urine, you might get WBCs, you might get WBC cast also. You might get RBCs, and especially if there's a renal calculi associated, you might get cast and even RBC casts. So a proper urine analysis and a urine culture is mandatory. I think now let's go into this is again a recapitulation of the UTI guidelines before I go into the antibiotic therapy. Asymptomatic bacteria is one part. Symptomatic can be acute cystitis and acute pyelonephritis. Asymptomatic, a count of more than 1 lakh. All pregnant women must be screened on their first prenatal visit between the 9th to the 17th week, whenever they visit. And this, although here it says 16th week, but the ACOG guidelines say definitely even by 12th week they should be screened. Antibiotic treatments are a must for asymptomatic bacteriuria to reduce the risk of acute cystitis and pyelonephritis. Because if you do not treat this asymptomatic bacteria, then they will tend to end up with a cystitis or progress to a pyelonephritis and with its associated complications. And the effective treatment is antibiotic therapy to be initiated as soon as the diagnosis is made. The drugs to be used are, which are suspected, nitrofurantoin. Here co-amoxiclav is because a lot of guidelines have given co-amoxiclav, but clavulanic acid is not to be used in pregnancy because of neonatal complications. So plain amoxicillin, cephalexin, cotrimoxazole, that is the plain Septrin or the Bactrim that we get. They can, depending upon the sensitivity, can be used for urinary tract infections. I'll go into details slightly, but remember the treatment can be either a single shot treatment, 1 day treatment, a 3-day treatment, or a 7 to 10 days treatment, depending upon how you give it. When do you suspect acute cystitis? Acute cystitis is suspected when you have the symptoms of urinary frequency, urgency, dysuria, and bacteriuria without any costovertebral angle tenderness. That means there is no renal angle tenderness. Moment you have a renal angle tenderness, please think of shift your diagnosis higher up to pyelonephritis. Now, all pregnant women suspected to have even an uncomplicated cystitis should obtain a culture, and antibiotics should be given accordingly. Here they've given the pus culture should be greater than 5 pus cells per high power field, or you can have a positive leukocyte esterase and a nitrite test. This is what I was talking about on the dipstick. I think this is for the dipstick, and you're doing the nitrite, so this is it. Now let us come to the actual thing about the treatment. Treatment of bacteriuria, asymptomatic bacteriuria, and cystitis. Here you have to give appropriate antibiotics. The route of administration is oral. This is cystitis and asymptomatic bacteriuria. The route of administration is oral administration. Maintain hydration. You do not have to give intravenous fluids for this patient, but you have to tell her to drink plenty of fluids. And only if it gets complicated, that admission has to be done. What are the antibiotic therapy? This I am again on just asymptomatic bacteriuria and cystitis. The single dose therapy is either 3 grams of amoxicillin, that means 6 capsules of amoxicillin, 2 grams of ampicillin, that means capsules of that. However, because of increased resistance to ampicillin, it is no longer recommended as the first line of treatment for a single dose therapy for UTI. Then we have the cephalosporins. Nitrofurantoin is a fantastic drug, and the single dose regime is 200 milligrams. However, nitrofurantoin is avoided close to term or close to delivery, because we all know that nitrofurantoin has a chance of causing hemolytic disorders of the newborn. Hence, it is not given in close to delivery. The next is trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole. That is the common Septrin, Sepmax, Bactrim. So this is 2 tablets of a Bactrim DS or a Sepmax. I'm not going in for companies, but these are the only 2 brands I know of actually. Because this is 320 and 1600. That means it's 1920 milligrams. So a double strength will contain 160 and 800. So you have to give 2 tablets of a double strength tablet in this. Again, this is the drug which has to be avoided in the first trimester, because trimethoprim is a folic acid antagonist, right? It has to be avoided in the third trimester because this causes kernicterus in a preterm neonate. So its only use is restricted to the second trimester of pregnancy. But it is a cheap drug and can be used. Last is fosfomycin. This, a single dose therapy at bedtime of the powder dissolved in water, is very effective antibiotic. All the single dose treatment has to be given at bedtime. This is the recommendation because that is when the urine, it concentrates maximum in the bladder, and hence the chances of treatment are higher. Single dose therapy may not eradicate completely and the chances of recurrence is higher. So they have gone in for a longer therapy, that is a 3 days therapy for asymptomatic bacteriuria and a 10 days treatment for 7 to 10 days. This is 10 to 40, but 7 to 10 days treatment for cystitis. And after you've finished treatment, please repeat a urine culture to see that the urine culture has become negative. Pyelonephritis is a different ballgame altogether. All this which I have mentioned is for cystitis, acute cystitis, as well as asymptomatic bacteriuria. Pyelonephritis needs more vigorous, more aggressive treatment. So first and foremost, because these patients are always febrile, you have to hospitalize the patient or she has to be on very close observation. She needs intravenous antibiotics. And the intravenous antibiotics of choice are ceftriaxone. Ceftriaxone, you have to give 1 gram per day and continue it till she is afebrile, and then switch over to oral medications for a total period of 14 days. For severe glomerulonephritis, pyelonephritis, you may even require meropenem 0.5 milligrams 8 hourly, again till she is afebrile, and after she is afebrile, you have to switch over to the oral medications and continue for a period of 14 days. Some textbooks have even recommended 21 days. But you have to do a urine culture before finalizing the therapy and see that the urine culture is negative, and only then you can say, okay, this is where I stop my antibiotics. Sometimes the urine culture may have to be repeated so that she is not again having a urinary tract infection. We have some adjuvant therapies. We are using, a lot of us are using adjuvant therapies for urinary tract infections like systemic alkalizers. Then we are using cranberries, D-mannose. Systemic alkalizers, they say it makes the urine alkaline. Sorry. So it flushes out the bacteria. Only thing is that it has certain, you cannot use it with a certain antibiotics. So you have to space it out with the antibiotic. Randomized controlled trials for alkalizers have not been done, but they are found to be effective. Similarly, for cranberry, they say it decreases the adherence of the bacteria to the urinary epithelium, and they are being used with good results. They can be continued also throughout pregnancy because this is safe in pregnancy. They can be continued throughout pregnancy, and they are found to be preventive in recurrence of the UTIs. Last but not the least, what are the other investigations you will do if there is a recurrence of UTI? So we will definitely advise an ultrasonography, because sometimes the UTI may be associated with renal stones. Sometimes there may be abnormalities of the renal tract, like you can have kinking of the ureters, and also there can be abnormalities of the renal tract, and these have a tendency of recurrence of the urinary tract infections. And if such diagnoses are found, like if you have a nephrolithiasis, then obviously she needs a urosurgeon's consultation, and they will manage whether the stone has to be removed or how they have to manage the stone. But stenting and removal of stones can be done in pregnancy. It is not contraindicated in pregnancy. So surgical treatment, if bladder stones are found, then a retrograde stent or a percutaneous nephrostomy tube can relieve the colics. You can remove the stones, but anyway, this is definitely a urosurgeon's domain. So the only thing is, it's not that you cannot give a patient the treatment. There's nothing that says that I can do nothing for you because you have a kidney stone. Something can be done and your symptoms can be relieved. So ladies and gentlemen, remember that urinary tract infection during pregnancy is a common cause of maternal and perinatal morbidity. However, with appropriate screening and treatment, this can be limited. Oral therapy is very good for asymptomatic bacteriuria and acute cystitis, whereas an intravenous therapy and hospitalization is mandatory for pyelonephritis. Thanks for bearing with me throughout this discourse. Any further questions?
Ma'am, we'll open up with a couple of questions which were asked during the discussion, during the presentation, ma'am. This question is from Dr. Sumita Lakshmi. So she's asked like 3 questions, ma'am. First question is when to repeat urine culture after antimicrobials if symptomatic?
Okay, if you've given the once you finish your therapy, like you've given, you have hello, Dr. Sumita. You said Dr. Sumita, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dr. Sumita. Dr. Sumita, once you've completed your course, like whichever you give, whichever therapy you're giving, if you're thinking of asymptomatic bacteriuria or cystitis, and you've given a 3-day regime, when you finish, you have to, before you finish, you have to repeat a urine culture to see that the urine culture is negative. If the urine culture is negative, then you can you may not continue further antibiotics, but the only thing is you have to tell the woman that she needs to be followed up because UTIs can recur in pregnancy. But you have to repeat a urine culture when you suspect pyelonephritis, and pyelonephritis, as I said, will require a 14-day therapy. So 14 days urine culture takes about 48 hours for the report to come. So 12th day of the therapy, you will again repeat a urine culture to see if it is negative, and then you stop the antibiotics on day 14.
Ma'am, the next question from Dr. Sumita Lakshmi is, can you please clarify how to decide the duration of therapy, as most of the times 3 days is not enough as suggested?
I agree. Normally, if a patient is symptomatic, then it is best to give a 7-day therapy, because symptomatic bacteriuria requires about a 7-day therapy, that is whether it is cystitis or whether it is pyelonephritis. So this will require about a 7 days therapy. The only thing they say is for asymptomatic bacteriuria, they say 3 days therapy. However, if I really find that high a colony count, even if the patient is asymptomatic, personally, I give them all a 7-day therapy.
Ma'am, I think Dr. Lakshmi Narayan Rath actually wanted to ask a question. Sir,
yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Hello.
So what is the dreaded complications in pregnancy? What is the common dreaded complications
Of urinary tract infections?
of UTI in pregnancy?
Well,
How do you manage it?
See, when you have UTI in pregnancy, it will definitely cause pain, and that can predispose to a preterm labor. So not only you're treating the urinary tract infections, you also have to treat the preterm labor, whichever drugs you're using. If the preterm labor is in the first trimester, then we give progesterones, and you can continue progesterones. And if the preterm labor is towards term in the third trimester, then even calcium channel antagonists like nifedipine can be given for the prevention of preterm labor. But progesterone is good because progesterone causes dilatations. So only problem with progesterone is that it will, besides it decreases the tone. As I said already, progesterone decreases the tone. It causes renodilation, and it increases the bladder capacity. So a patient tends to hold more. So sometimes even progesterones can complicate your UTI. But if they have preterm labor, you give her progesterones and calcium channel antagonists. If they decrease the preterm labor, it is good enough.
The next question, yeah, sir.
I read a question, any role of prebiotics in pregnancy?
Yes,
yeah. Yeah. Definitely, because as I said, it's an ascending infection. So the ascending infection are from the vagina, the perineum, and the anus. So prebiotics are prevent your. They are more on the preventive role. Role of prebiotics is in the preventive role. So if administration of prebiotics decrease the incidence of having urinary tract infections.
Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Anju Sharma. She asks, how is bacterial vaginosis linked with bacteriurium?
One of the causative organisms for bacteriuria is group B beta hemolytic streptococcus, and that is the causative organism for bacterial vaginosis. So if in that you get bacteriuria, then the treatment of choice is obviously amoxicillin. They say penicillins, but penicillin amoxicillin is the treatment of choice because one of the causative organisms is group B streptococcus. I read a question out there. How is the midstream urine collected?
Yes, ma'am. This is from Dr. Ravi Bharti.
All right. Dr. Ravi, they say obvious midstream urine first. Clean the vulval area with normal water, then separate the labia with whichever hand you are comfortable with. If you want to hold the urine collection pot in the right hand, then the labia has to be separated with the left, the index and the middle fingers of the left hand. And once the labia is separated, initial amount of urine has to pass off, and after the initial urine passes off, then get that urine pot closer to the urethra and collect the midstream urine, and then until the collection is complete, the labia cannot be left. I mean, the separated labia cannot be left.
Ma'am, there's one more question from Dr. Sumita Lakshmi. What is the role of quinolones in pregnancy?
Quinolones are a group C drug, so they are not recommended in pregnancy. Even by the American College ACOG guidelines and all, they have not recommended quinolones in pregnancy. Even among the aminoglycosides, they have said amikacin is again a group D drug. Amikacin they have not allowed. They've said no to amikacin in pregnancy. Gentamicin is group C. So all these they have said unless to avoid amikacin and quinolones in pregnancy.
I think Dr. Geeta ma'am had a comment. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Dr. Geeta ma'am. There's some connection disturbance. Ma'am, the next question again is from Dr. Anju. She asks, after 3 days of treatment, should we or would we repeat the urine analysis?
Yes, you can repeat. You should repeat a routine examination with the nitrite test. Because see, urine culture, if you repeat after 3 days, then actually you have to be repeating the urine culture after day 1 of treatment. Because if a urine culture comes out positive, if the urine culture has to come out positive on day 3, then the sample has to be collected after day 1 of treatment, which has no utility at all. 1 day of treatment is not going to. Hello. So 1 day of therapy is not going to alter your urine culture. Hence, urine analysis is what is recommended after a 3 days therapy. Urine analysis has to be done after day 3 of therapy.
Okay. Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Sudha Singh. When pregnancy with UTI due to a renal stone, can we give tab calcari along with antibiotics?
Sorry, tablet?
Ma'am, pregnancy with UTI due to a renal stone, can we give calcuri like drugs along with antibiotics?
See, pregnancy, I'm sorry, calcuri is what, the stone dissolving drugs.
Yes, ma'am.
See, in renal stones, renal stones, once a renal stone has been formed, you can give these the preparations which are coming, which are dissolve and all, which are, they say it dissolves the renal stones, but the randomized controlled trials for those drugs to actually show that it is effective in dissolving the stone is not present, and whether it is going to decrease the incidence of the stone formation is also not seen. If the major problem is pain, then what she needs is basically an antispasmodic as well as a pain relief. Now in pregnancy, NSAIDs are contraindicated because NSAIDs are going to obviously have a further complication of blockage of the patent ductus arteriosus and oligohydramnios. So the only analgesic which you have of choice is basically paracetamol. Otherwise, you can go in for opioids. You can use the urinary antispasmodics like flavoxate, that can be used, that is safe in pregnancy. And they say these preparations which decrease the incidence of renal stones, but I'm not saying that they actually will stop renal stones from forming, or they are going to they will dissolve a renal stone completely. Most renal stones, if they're very small, they get flushed out automatically. If they can pass the ureter, and if once they enter the bladder, they'll get flushed out anyway. The only problem is that in the ureter.
Okay. The next question is from Dr. Subhita Lakshmi. When a patient presents with severe vulvovaginitis associated with UTI, how do we proceed, ma'am?
I hear the vulvovaginitis and the UTI are coexisting. So I think you have to treat both. You have to treat the UTI, and now unfortunately all antibiotic therapies will, we all know all antibiotic therapies lead to, they are predisposed to an increase in the fungal infections because of the concomitant decrease of the bacterial flora in the vagina. So you have to give her a local antifungal treatment. If you think the vulvovaginitis is a fungal infection, is due to a fungal infection, you have to treat the vulvovaginitis in a local application while you're giving antibiotics for the urinary tract infection, and you cover it with probiotics.
The next question is again from Dr. Ravi Bharti. How early do we or how early should we send the specimen for culture, ma'am?
One is that according to the ACOG guidelines, what they do is, what their protocol is, when the patient first comes to, when the antenatal woman first comes to you, they do a urine routine and culture. However, in our setup, a urine analysis we do first, and if a urine analysis shows bacteria, we obviously will advise urine culture. Or if she is symptomatic, once she is symptomatic, she has the symptoms of urinary tract infection, then when we are giving a urine routine, we will simultaneously tell her to give a urine culture. She's already done the midstream urine collection, so she will anyway give it in a sterile container, and the same urine will be done for analysis as well for culture.
Ma'am, there's a compliment for you from Dr. Kumkum Saini. Thank you so much for a very informative talk, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Kumkum.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just hope it's beneficial. Honestly speaking, I never took UTI so seriously as I did after reading about it right now.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello, I'm Dr. Trishula here. I heard one more question.
Sure.
Is there any role for stenting?
Yes,
if they have got
definitely there is a role for stenting. It was on the slide also when I showed surgical management. There is a role of stenting, and for the ureteric stones, definitely.
Thank you.
And the next question is from Dr. Sumita Lakshmi. I think you spoke about this, but what is the role of amoxiclav in pregnancy? When to use, ma'am?
Okay. Yes, I took it up. It was there on the slides because quite a few things which even I searched, they said antibiotics as amoxiclav. But let me be very clear, clavulanic acid is contraindicated in pregnancy. It increases the chance of NEC in the neonate. Even in breastfeeding, clavulanic acid is contraindicated. So amoxiclav is a no in pregnancy. A plain amoxicillin, yes, but combinations, no. And if you feel that the patient is not sensitive to amoxicillin, you can move on to cephalosporins or nitrofurantoins, whichever one you choose according to the urine culture.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And the next question is from Dr. Priyanka. She asks, can urinary alkalizer be given with along with antibiotics?
Yeah, the only thing is quite a few of the antibiotics, they act in an acidic medium. So when you give a urinary alkalizer, you have to space it. You have to tell them that don't take both of them together. You take about a 4 hours gap between the antibiotic and the urinary alkalizer. So that way it's not a problem taking alkalizers with the antibiotics.
Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Ravi Bharati. He says, your suggestion on giving empirical IV antibiotics before a culture report actually comes in.
See, I said only for pyelonephritis. Only for pyelonephritis. If you suspect pyelonephritis, you have to go in for intravenous antibiotics. But to actually diagnose pyelonephritis, you have to have a urinary culture report. So if you have fever with chill and rigor and a right renal flank, your provisional diagnosis is pyelonephritis. Pyelonephritis usually does not respond to oral antibiotics. Now, you will obviously give the urine routine and culture. Unfortunately, the report is going to come after 48 hours. So either you sit and wait for 48 hours and then start, or you start immediately. I think the only thing is that whether that antibiotic you start, whether her bacteria is sensitive to that antibiotic or not. That is the only doubt you have. So if you commonest ones are ceftriaxone, which nowadays they are starting. And you can start off with ceftriaxone injectable until the urine report comes. Once the urine report comes as responding to some other organism, you can switch over to the other organism. But pyelonephritis, fever with chill and rigor and flank pains, patient is in pyelonephritis and going into sepsis, waiting for 2 days is going to take a heavy toll on the pregnancy. Will take some toll on the pregnancy.
Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Sangeeta, ma'am. She says, in cases of repeat culture on third day of treatment, do we need to continue treatment till the report comes, or this is not required?
That's what I said. See, the 3-day therapy, which they say for asymptomatic bacteriuria, so it's very difficult to repeat a culture because culture takes time. So when you do a 3-day therapy of the antibiotics, then the only thing you can do after 3 days is the urine analysis and the dipstick for nitrites. So if you want to repeat a culture, if you think you're going to repeat a culture, then at least you should do a 7-day therapy so that you can repeat the culture on day 5 and get the report by day 7 before stopping the antibiotics, or whether you need to switch over to and find out whether the urine is sterile or not. At least you will require a minimum of 5 days therapy, even for a to see that the bacteria has disappeared from the urine. Otherwise, a urine culture after, say, if you do a 3-day therapy and you send the urine for culture, and your culture report will come on day 5. The culture report which comes on day 5 says that it is still responsive to the organism you were treating from day 1 to day 3. So you will not go back to the same antibiotic, because if you've given the same antibiotic for 3 days, you have stopped, and then your bacteria still comes out to be positive. You are not going to resume the same antibiotic. You have to change your antibiotic. So 3-day therapy and a culture is it's going to take some time. So if you 3 days therapy, if you want to do something, you do a urine analysis and nitrite. If the bacteria is still present, then you continue with the antibiotics, and at least after 5 days you repeat a urine culture.
Ma'am, there's a compliment from Dr. Anju Sharma. Very excellent talk, ma'am, and you solved all the queries.
Thank you. See, actually, all this is, some of them is quite practical, so that is why it comes out. But thanks a lot.
Ma'am, the next question is from routine is negative, but the patient has frequency of urination and dysuria. What should the treatment options be? And in these patients, the estrogen therapy has been tried already locally.
Oh, it's already been tried locally. See,
Right.
in postmenopausal women, the dysuria frequency is also due to thinning of the vaginal epithelium, and that is so their urinary symptoms are much higher. Now, if she's treated with, she's been treated with estrogen for how long? Because estrogen therapy should resolve her dysuria if it is due to the thinning of the vaginal epithelium and the urogenital thinness causing dysuria. Now, if her dysuria persists and her urine culture is negative, bacteria is also not there. She's got no bacteria also. She's got no bacteria.
Right.
Then there is some kind of a, with the dysuria persisting, then there is some kind of a, that she's got some kind of a sensitivity, some neuropathy, or some kind of a vascular neuropathy of the bladder. So you can investigate her for her diabetes, blood sugar status, to see whether she's diabetic or not. Any vaginitis or any other cause of vaginitis, which can also mimic as dysuria. But dysuria not responding to estrogen, and with a urine routine and urine analysis and a culture of culture negative, is not the dysuria is due to some kind of a neuropathy or some kind of a vaginitis.
Right. Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Lalita. She says, what is the treatment of recurrent UTI in pregnancy, ma'am?
Okay, yeah, this is something I missed. And a recurrent UTI, if recurrent cystitis and UTIs, you can think of nitrofurantoin is a very good drug. And the dose for nitrofurantoin here, they say, is 100 milligrams. You continue it. You just continue it. Sometimes even throughout pregnancy, you can continue it, but just stop it at the last moment. So that can be continued throughout pregnancy. That is very effective for recurrence of UTI for recurrent UTI.
Okay.
Then, and you can give cranberry, as I said, cranberry and D-mannose is quite effective in recurrent UTIs, along with antibiotics. But nitrofurantoin as 100 milligram daily should be continued.
Ma'am, the next question is from Dr. Aarti, ma'am. She asks, phosphomycin single dose in all trimesters, is it recommended?
Phosphomycin is, my honest opinion, it's not a very old drug. So for the last few years, phosphomycin, the trials of phosphomycin have not shown any teratogenicity. However, phosphomycin is not the first line of drug for UTI. Phosphomycin, there's Dr. Anju Sharma has written, can we give phosphomycin weekly? No, it is not recommended weekly. There's only a single dose of phosphomycin. Phosphomycin is a single shot dose, only one dose at bedtime. It is not considered to be a repetitive dose of phosphomycin. But very long-term trials on phosphomycin have not been done because it is not such an old drug. Teratogenicities have not been found. First trimester, you can always try for cystitis and asymptomatic bacteriuria. You can always try the first line of drugs. And if you have complicated UTI, only then going for phosphomycin. But it is safe in the second trimester, and there are no complications in the third trimester either.
Ma'am, there's a request from Dr. Melvin Priya. Can you repeat the role of flavoxate in UTI, ma'am?
Flavoxate is only a urinary antispasmodic. Actually, it causes when you have any kind of pain, your muscles go into spasm. So the urinary muscles also, the detrusor muscles also go into spasm when there is pain, and that spasm leads to a detrusor instability, and you have frequency of micturition. Then you can have inadequate micturition, hesitancy, and all. So it works as an antispasmodic. It decreases the spasm of the muscles, and that way your bladder evacuation is better. So if you evacuate properly, once the evacuation is good, then, as I said, quite a lot of UTIs get washed off on their own. Quite a lot of bacteria actually get washed off. So a complete bladder evacuation And if the pain is less, you can even punch it with paracetamol if you want. If the pain is less, then the symptom, and then of course you're going to obviously add antibiotics with it, because without antibiotics you cannot clear the bacteria. So that is the role of Fluvoxamine. It is going to act as a urinary antispasmodic and decrease your spasm.
Any other comments, doctors? You can unmute and ask. I think Dr. Geeta ma'am, you were asking, but you got logged off. You can unmute and give your comment or question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
See, in repeated UTI, I tried many times nitrofurantoin 100 mg HS, and
Yeah.
I find it very effective.
Right, correct. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the excellent, very detailed, very educative class.
I think I should thank Dr. Kiran, because the slides were his. The slides weren't mine. It was his slide. He was the one who sent the slides over. So I think Dr. Kiran, thank you goes to you.
No, ma'am. Actually, preparation is one, but with your practical experience and the depth of knowledge, the way you portray this, it can't be matched. Any other questions, comments, doctors?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am.
Good
Dr.
evening. Good
Sabira?
evening. Yeah,
Is this
Dr.
Dr.
Sabira.
Sabira?
Ma'am, there any guidance for this? Hello. Any dietary restrictions? Same as UTI or anything else? Dietary restrictions.
They just said plenty of water. The dietary restrictions have not been made. Only with renal stones. Once you have renal stones and you think they are urate crystals or phosphates, then only you give the dietary restrictions. But otherwise, this is a bacteria which is invading into the urinary system via the genital system. So anything which they say increases your immunity to organisms, antibiotics, all any diet which is rich in antioxidants and immune boosters, plenty of water, that is all which is going to
I
help.
studied somewhere else that we have to avoid sour, like lemon and all those.
Citric
Is
acids.
it true, ma'am?
Acidic diet.
Sour things like lemon. Yeah.
See,
We should avoid acidic diet, na, ma'am? It's true.
No, it's not written anywhere that an acidic diet has to be avoided.
Okay.
It's not in this thing, but I don't know. See, there are a lot of things about like, for instance, the Ayurveda and the other methods of the other alternative medicines have a lot of theories, and they're not
Yeah,
wrong. I'm not saying they're wrong. They're perfectly right. The only thing is that it's very difficult, because to substantiate a theory is very difficult. But if you remember, even for if you recall, even for infections, when we have it's recommended, if you take lemon juice with a bit of baking soda in the lemon juice, it is also effective. So it is not that a lemon or any of the citrus foods are contraindicated in infections. The only thing is, because they say the alkaline, that's why they have systemic alkalizers. No, the alkaline medium, it washes out the bacteria fast. So if you can if you can have a systemic alkalizers are increasing the washout of the bacteria. So if you're making it more acidic, then maybe the adherence is going to increase to the, that is the, you're saying one negative and a positive like that. Probably it's that kind of an analysis, that anything acidic is maybe going to increase the adherence of the E. coli to the epithelium, because an alkali medium decreases the adherence. That's all.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
But this is
Hello?
something I need to. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
What is the role of barley water? Many people ask, no, shall you take barley water?
Ma'am, I really have no idea about these kind of thing about barley water. I can't really recommend. I only knew that barley water and all was recommended for gastrointestinal symptoms. Now, because barley water was recommended for gastrointestinal systems, and a urinary tract infection is basically from the E. coli of the gut. So it is basically a gut infection which is coming to the coming to your bladder. So if you can decrease the incidence of a gut infection, if you can decrease the colonization of the E. coli in your gut by any method, then you decrease the incidence of urinary tract infection. Now, whichever, that is the same way that probiotics are acting actually. They are all decreasing the colonization of the bacteria in your GI system. And if you decrease that colonization, then you are decreasing the incidence of the urinary tract infection. And probably barley water is going to act in the same fashion. Besides, it has water, which anyway causes hydration and decreases urinary tract infection.
Thank you.
It's probably from the gut, because the E. coli which is coming is a gut E. coli. That is, everything is coming from the rectum.
Thank you.
Can phosphomycin be given? There was some comment. Can phosphomycin be given?
In all, I think you already answered it, ma'am.
At bedtime. It should be given only at bedtime.
Ma'am, a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
Why to withhold nitrofurantoin in the last trimester?
It causes hemolytic disease of the newborn. See, actually, it's got something. It is. They say it causes. It is the newborn has an immature erythrocyte enzyme system, and that immature erythrocyte system, it causes glutathione instability, and that predisposes the baby to a hemolytic disorder of the newborn, and hence it is it is not to be given just immediately when you suspecting that, oh, she's going to deliver in say a week or 10 days before delivery. You're supposed to stop nitrofurantoin, because even persistence of that nitrofurantoin, if it doesn't wash out of the baby's blood, then it can cause hemolytic disease once the baby is born. Because as long as the baby is in maternal circulation, the thing is going to get washed out through the it is going to go to the baby and come out, so that baby's organs are not the ones which are actually functioning. But once the baby is clamped and separated, then the baby's organs have to function. So if at that time their baby's organs are not able to wash out the nitrofurantoin, it causes hemolytic disease of the newborn.
The next question is from Dr. Jayachandran, ma'am. Same question has two parts. Part one of the question is cephalexin or cetirizine. Which generation of cephalosporins do you prefer?
The cephalosporin generations are depending upon their gram positive, gram negative to gram negative. That is how the generations goes. So the generation 1 is more gram positive, generation 2 is gram positive and gram negative, and generation 3 is mainly gram negative. And the 4th generation has got more Pseudomonas activity and MRSA. So 3rd generation cephalosporins should be the preferred choice. But even if you go for the 2nd generation, because it has also got a gram negative coverage, slight gram negative coverage, you can go in for a 2nd generation cephalosporins also. But a 3rd generation cephalosporins are much more gram negative than the 2nd generation ones. So besides, if you're giving it empirically, then you should start off with the 3rd generation cephalosporins. But if you are giving it after urine culture, then the urine culture itself is saying which is the organism. If it is a gram positive organism, then you have to give a gram positive coverage.
Ma'am, the next question again related to cephalosporins from Dr. Jayachandran. He asks, in cases of patients who are of acute pyelonephritis and sensitive to ceftriaxone, what is your drug of choice, ma'am?
See, if it is sensitive to the next one is automatically becomes meropenem, because that is the one which will cover your Pseudomonas and your MRSA. Because if a patient is sensitive to ceftriaxone, she is sensitive to all the cephalosporins as well as the penicillin group of drugs. They are all the same molecule. So you have to move on to meropenem from there. Can you explain the side effects?
Flavonoic acid. I think.
Oh, it causes necrotizing enterocolitis in the newborn.
Ma'am, I had one question,
Yeah,
just for
yeah.
curiosity, ma'am.
Hmm.
If you don't mind, I can ask that question.
Please go ahead. Let's see if I can answer. I'm not positive that I can
This
answer
is
all
something which I
questions.
really wonder, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, during these times of pandemic, and we don't know how this is going to last, either we develop herd immunity or we get a vaccine. So, in these kind of situations, how does the management of UTI change from your perspective?
See, the only thing is that now we are obviously, the whole thing is that we are not seeing the patients the first hand, so we are dependent on their investigations and their lab reports, and we are advising them accordingly. So earlier it was a personal thing, and we could examine them, we could elicit renal tenderness, but now we have to tell them that, okay, you palpate here, and you tell them you have to do this and find out if they have those symptoms, because everything is literally on either a video conferencing or a WhatsApp video call or something of that sort. But if you are seeing the patient, because it's hopefully by 3rd May we should see some changes. If we are seeing the patients, then it remains the same. Now, whether this virus increases the incidence of other infections, I really don't know. How much it alters your immunity to increase, make you more susceptible to urinary tract infections, I don't know. The only thing is that probably because of the lockdown, everybody is at home. So as I said, there are increased chances of UTI because of the increased sexual coitus. So maybe the UTI rates will be higher.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, two compliments from Dr. Sudha Singh and Dr. Minu Kumari. Thank you so much for a very nice webinar, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But I'll definitely look up some of these Ayurvedic medications that they said, because this is something I need to speak to an Ayurvedic doctor about the role of various things in infections. And I need to do that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, doctors? I think we can wind up.
Wrap it up, yeah.
Kumar sir?
Yeah. Dr. Nivedita madam and esteemed participants, your valuable time and participation is much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants, and thank you to Urvashi. I'm so happy that there's so many participants and there's so many questions. That means people actually heard what I said.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Kiran too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, so much again for all preparation and fantastic presentation, and for a very dynamic and very practical and very effective Q&A session, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. Thank you to all the participants, and it was great interacting with all of you. I just hope I could do justice to the whole topic of something so simple and yet so complicated. That is urinary tract infections in pregnancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.